Hi, Bob Long, LADC. I thought I would do something different with this video. I was really inspired the other night. We went to Owasso and witnessed the celebration of America's 249th birthday. And I started thinking, I don't know how much people know about the original signers of the Declaration of Independence or anything about that. So what I thought I would do while you're watching some video here is just maybe share a little bit. Basically, there were 56 signers who adopted the Declaration of Independence. Actually, it's kind of interesting because there's a few people that you would think who would have signed it, but they didn't. George Washington, Alexander Hamilton, and Patrick Henry. No, I'm not saying they didn't want to sign it. They were just elsewhere, so they didn't have the opportunity to sign it. Ben Franklin was the only really old man there that put his John Hancock to it, and we'll get into why we call it a John Hancock here in just a little bit. That's a signature for those of you who are under 40. 18 were under 40. 3 were in their 20s. Of the 56, almost half, 24, were judges and lawyers. 11 were merchants and landowners and farmers. And the remaining 12 were doctors, ministers, and politicians. With only a few exceptions, such as Samuel Adams of Massachusetts, these were men of substantial property. And no, Samuel Adams of Massachusetts back then did not develop the beer. But just thought I would throw that one in there as a caveat. Let's see here. Let's keep going here. Each of these men had more to lose from revolution than he had to gain by it. John Hancock, one of the richest men in America, already had a price of 500 pounds on his head. He signed in enormous letters so that His Majesty the King could now read his name without glasses and could now double the reward. Ben Franklin noted, quote, "Indeed, we must all hang together, otherwise we shall most assuredly hang separately." And back then, people did have a sense of humor. That Benjamin Harrison of Virginia told tiny Elbridge Gerry, Gerry, of Massachusetts, "With me, it will all be over in a minute, but you will be dancing on the air for an hour after I'm gone." These men knew that they risked the penalty for treason, and the penalty for treason was death by hanging. And remember, a great British fleet was already at anchor in New York Harbor. These men weren't rebel rousers. These men they were okay with taxation with representation. It's when you had taxation without representation that they got their noses up in the air. It was definitely principle, not property, that had brought these men to Philadelphia. 2 of them became presidents of the United States. 7 of them became state governors. 1 died in office as a vice president of the United States. Several would go on to be U.S. senators. One, the richest man in America, in 1828, founded the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad. Another one, a delegate from Philadelphia, was the only real poet, musician, and philosopher of the signers. And it was he, Francis Hopkinson, not Betsy Ross, who designed the United States flag. Everyone gives credit to Betsy Ross. Not sure the whole story on that. And through the resolution, though the resolution was formally adopted on July the 4th, we're talking about the Declaration of Independence, it was not until July 8th that 2 of the states authorized their delegates to sign it. And it wasn't until August 2nd that the signers met at Philadelphia to actually put their names to the Declaration. Even before the list was published, the British marked down every member of Congress suspected of having put his name to treason. All of them became the objects of vicious manhunts. Some were taken. Some, like Jefferson, had narrow escapes. All who had property or families near British strongholds suffered greatly. Francis Lewis, a delegate from New York, saw his home plundered. His estate in what is now Harlem, completely destroyed by British soldiers. Mrs. Lewis was captured and treated with great brutality. Though she was later exchanged for 2 British prisoners through the efforts of Congress, she died from the effects of her abuse. William Floyd, another New York delegate, was able to escape with his wife and children across Long Island Sound to Connecticut, where they lived as refugees without income for 7 years. When they came home, they found a devastated ruin. Phillips Livingstone had all his great holdings in New York confiscated and his family driven out of their home. Livingston died in 1778, still working in Congress for the cause. Lewis Morris, the 4th New York delegate, saw his timber crops and livestock taken. For 7 years he was barred from his home and family. And it goes on and on and on. One interesting person was Dr. Benjamin Rush. He was a surgeon with the Army. Dr. Benjamin Rush also was one of the very first Americans who recognized that alcoholism was a disease and promoted that and said that it should be treated as such. Dr. Benjamin Rush, also from Pennsylvania, was forced to flee to Maryland as a heroic surgeon with the Army. Rush had several narrow escapes. And as I said, the list goes on and on. If they didn't capture the person itself, they took it out on their children. Thomas Nelson, signer of Virginia, was at the front in command of the Virginia military forces, with British General Charles Cornwallis in Yorktown. Fire from 70 heavy American guns began to destroy Yorktown piece by piece. Lord Cornwallis and his staff moved their headquarters into Nelson's palatial home. While American cannonballs were making a shambles of the town, the house of Governor Nelson remained untouched. Nelson turned in rage to the American gunners and asked, "Why do you spare my home?" They replied, "Sir, out of respect to you." Nelson cried, "Give me that damn gun." He fired the cannon on his own magnificent home, smashing it to bits. But Nelson's sacrifice was not quite over. He had raised $2 million for revolutionary causes by pledging his own estates. When the loans came due, a newer peacetime Congress refused to honor them, and Nelson's property was forfeited. He was never reimbursed. He died, impoverished, a few years later at the age of 50. Of those 56 who signed the Declaration of Independence, 9 died of wounds or hardships during the war. 5 were captured and imprisoned. In each case with brutal treatment. Several lost wives, sons, or entire families. One lost his 13 children. 2 wives were brutally beaten. All were at one time or another the victims of manhunts and driven from the homes. 12 signers had their homes completely burned. 17 lost everything they owned. Yet not one defected or went back on his pledged word. Their honor and the nation they sacrificed so much to create is still intact. So this 4th of July, I hope you've had a really good 4th of July. If you suffer from addiction, and you want to be free of it, let's do that together. You can do it. I know you can. Other people have. You just have to have the desire and the want to. And then you find out, then you go seek help, and you find that help from people like me or like sponsors who really care and want you to have a great life. Interestingly enough, Patrick Henry was the first American to claim that today I am an American. Once the Declaration of Independence was passed. Not before it was signed, but before it was passed. Folks, enjoy the last 3 minutes of fireworks.